Welcome to the Auric Investigators Podcast with Vicki McHale, a mutant 4/6 emotional generator with a line 1 motivation, and Lauren Wenzel, a collective 5/1 mental projector. Join us as we deep dive into off the beaten path subjects. But be careful, because we might just make you think, or even better, burst a few outdated bubbles around what you've been led to believe is truth. Agree or disagree, it's okay, because we have nothing to prove. So let's get started. Hey everybody, this is Vicki and Lauren, and we're back for our second episode, and we're so excited to be here. Today we're going to be talking about misdiagnoses around ADHD and bipolar disorder, things that actually show up in the chart that a lot of times, had people have known, there might have been a different diagnosis. I also want to go into a little bit about kids that are bullied. There are so many things that actually, if you know about human design chart and you look at what's going on in your child's life or what has happened in your own childhood or even what's going on now, a lot of it can be explained. A big one, depression. For example, if you have a lot of individual circuitry, there is a natural melancholy that you have, and it is medication resistant. So a lot of people who have been on medication, or say they're medication resistant to their depression medication, it could be misunderstanding your circuitry, because it has to do with your mechanics, not chemicals, and all the medicine in the world isn't going to help you. The same with ADHD. If you have a child who's truly not ADHD and you're giving them Ritalin or medicine, which was the case with both of my kids, and it's not working, what do the doctors do? They just keep upping the medication until you turn these kids into zombies. And Lauren, who has a background in psychology, she really can give some insight on it from, more of a medical or experiential perspective. So I am so excited to bring this to you today, because as a parent, and again, there's nobody to blame and there's no going back, I did everything the wrong way.
Yeah, and let's talk about the undefined and open emotional center, because I have a completely emotional center. And so
completely open?
Yeah, completely open. Yeah, no gates. So when somebody has an undefined center, that means that their center is white, but they have some gates. And then when somebody's center is open, they have no gates at all. So when we talk about an open center, it's you have no filter of experiencing that energy. It just hits you like a volcano, it erupts, but then it's meant to pass through you. Well, most people, without this intel and knowledge, they are mistaking it for their own energy instead of actually receiving it from the outside. And this is such a thing I see with most sensitives and empaths. I mean, almost 100% that I know are undefined or open. And in human design, when somebody is open emotional or undefined emotional, they're actually supposed to be non-emotional. And when somebody has a defined emotional center, they're supposed to be emotional. But what happens is we're usually conditioned to be our not selves. So emotional people show up very cold, suppressing their emotions, burying them deep down. And then all the undefined and open emotional people will be receiving that distortion of emotions, feeling crazy, feeling bipolar, having all these misdiagnoses of emotional disorders, when in reality, yeah, there will be intensity as you're receiving and witnessing the emotions, but it's completely different from the misdiagnosis. And I'm not trying to, put anything on trauma or healing, like that's all relevant too. And it's just really how you experiment with your design in this intel. Like for me, I was on anti-anxiety meds, antidepressant meds, different type of medication for these intense emotions that I would experience all the time, and nothing would work for me. Like, I would feel a little bit better for maybe the first week or two, but then it was like something inside was just off. And like Vicky was saying, my doctors would up the dosage, give me more medication, then I would have worse side effects. And when I learned about my human design and really going through the deconditioning process, I realized I was amplifying and taking on everybody else's emotions. Ever since I was a kid, I felt like I knew people's emotions better than they did. And that's just always something that has stuck with me. And going through this process, I've been really able to witness people and their emotions and not taking it on. But if I'm not conscious in that, I can really distort what I'm experiencing. And sometimes it's a daily ask of like, is this mine? Is this not mine? And you're going to experiencing it very differently. Maybe somebody could be actually thinking about you and you experience and receive their emotional energy. Or you can be in the same room as somebody and something can be off inside of them, but they don't appear emotional. And then you're thinking, what the hell is going on? But it's a distortion and amplification. So even if it's a little bit, it will feel like a lot in your undefined and open centers, especially the emotional center. So we always want to look at the gift and the wisdom in these centers. So for me, having a completely emotional center, I'm really able to witness and be with people as they're experiencing their emotions and not making any judgments, not saying it's right or wrong, never telling anybody to suppress it, because that just creates even more medical issues and stress and all these things, but just let it come out, whether you're defined or not. But for the most part, people who are undefined or open, our natural state is the chillness. But then when these emotions we receive, because the emotional defined people, they're the transmitters. So when we receive this, we can let it go. We can receive it and let it go, however long it takes. Whereas emotional defined people, they get to experience their emotion in waves. So whatever your pace is, whatever your experience with emotions, there's no judgment. You just get to experience it and release any stories around emotions.
Yeah. And I want to back up here a little bit, because one of the things I want to make clear about this podcast is we are going to do some explaining on things, but this is probably not the podcast for people who have never really heard about human design or they're in the process of just learning about human design, because we are actually taking higher concepts or concepts where there's an assumption that about open centers or defined centers or those types of things. So while we may go over it a little bit, it's going to be fast. So if it's confusing for you, we completely understand. This may not be the podcast for you. This is more for those people that, they have the basis, they have the foundation, and now we're going into kind of higher levels of learning. And so there's nothing wrong with that. Or if you're listening to it and maybe you don't understand all of it, but it triggers something in you to say, wait, there's more here I need to learn, then please reach out, because a lot of these things we will be talking about are not going to be for the beginner. So,
right, exactly.
And as Lauren was explaining about the open emotional, I'll explain it how it happened in my own family is I was married to somebody who had open emotions, and my two boys had open emotional centers, and I have a defined emotional center. I had learned to shut down my emotions from a very, very young age. And then I worked in an industry that was extremely volatile, homeowner association management. So there was always some anger or always some crisis going on. So I would be sitting there not even aware and understand the gates off of my my channels off of my emotional center are, some of them are subconscious. So sometimes you don't even realize when it's
that's a good point.
It is that you're feeling. So I would be sitting there just working, and my sons or my husband would come home and they'd say, what's the matter with you? And I'd say, there's nothing the matter with me. And in my mind, I wasn't even cognizant of it. And they'd say, yes, there is. And they would start ramping up and getting upset. And I'm sitting there going, why are you getting so upset? And I'm getting upset because they're getting upset. And then the next thing you know, they're off their rocker. And I'm sitting there going, what the hell just happened? And the more upset I get, the more upset they get. So from me not understanding energetics and the emotional aspect of human design, they looked like the crazy people to me. So here I have a kid who is going off his rocker just based upon my emotions. And then he has an undefined root center, which means he's always under pressure to do things quicker. And guess who has a defined root and is always in a hurry? It's me. So I'm also pressuring him. And then one particular son is a manifesting generator with the channel 34, which is the most energetic, busy channel you can have in human design. And then he has a completely open head in Ashna. So this kid was getting shit beat out of him from every place. He is naturally in a hurry, but then I'm pressuring him. He's got these emotions going on, things going on in his head he can't figure out. The teachers are calling me because he's, misbehaving in school. And what do? We say, this kid has behavioral problems, ADHD. So.
Yeah, my background is working with the special needs and autism population. And I saw a lot of kids being medicated. And, I didn't know human design back then, but I can almost guarantee that they're empathic. They're picking up on other people's emotions. And so since some of them might be nonverbal or have, other different abilities, and so, but they're receiving this information from either the emotions or with a completely open head. Somebody might be psychic and taking in other people's thoughts. And what happens when we don't know this information and we're just trying to put a Band-Aid on it, it's suppressing and causing more problems than it actually, is providing the help that person actually needs. And I'm not saying anything about, you should or you shouldn't do this. Isn't what this is about. This is just contemplating and saying like, well, if I am doing something that is benefiting me, great. Like, it's not to take away from that. But if something is not giving you the answers or maybe the freedom or the understanding that you're looking for, then maybe this is something to contemplate. And with the population and the community and my clients that I used to work with, it was like trying to take a circle and put it in a square peg and just beating it into it. And it didn't work. And no matter the types of medications or different things that, were being prescribed, the same thing that I experienced with my own journey with being medicated is it would always be switched and upped and this and that and changed. And that's very hard on anybody, especially a developing child. So I think, human design, looking at these open and undefined centers, really explain like where am I taking in information? Where is it being amplified? Where is it being distorted? If I see a lot of people with an open crown be diagnosed as ADHD, 100%. Almost, like, because they have no container to remember their thoughts. Like, it's just not there. And so what happens is, because I've noticed men and women experience ADHD very differently. And so with women, it's they have no source for their thoughts, so they can be very forgetful. They'll misplace things, they'll lose track of time. So it's like knowing what is going to support you and just being like, I don't have ADHD, I just don't have the storage space in my mind. So like having reminders, setting alarms, doing things that support you instead of misdiagnosing and disempowering. And the same thing for an undefined root. You can experience somebody who is amplifying all this root energy and pressure to always be on the go to release this pressure that is not even yours. And I have an undefined root, so I experience that as well.
Well, and going back to my son, who's a manifesting generator with the open root head and emotional center, he's also a 1-3. So with the 3, they're experimental and they learn by making mistakes. So he was always making mistakes and we didn't know. And it's so funny because my parents, they still go, we were amazed that you grew up to be successful. This is really sad because we didn't think you were very smart. You did all of these really dumb things. And so I really took that to heart over the years. Like, it's really sad when your own parents don't think you're smart. But when I look back, I did do some dumb things. But as a 3, we are here to learn from our mistakes. So again, I didn't know that. And you take, this 3420 manifesting generator with the 3 and an open root and open emotion and open head. And he was like a ping pong ball, absolute ping pong ball. Uh-oh, my dog, we're not professionals here. My dog's about ready to make his self known. And then my other son was the opposite. He's a generator, but he only has the root to the sacral. And one of those is the channel 360. And then he has the 9, which 9, no focus whatsoever.
Focus or not.
Yeah. Open emotions, open spleen, and then mutant circuitry. He was weird. People saw him but he was amplifying things from everybody else. And the poor kid, he was just a wreck, not his own thoughts, had no idea who he was. My oldest, at least he had a defined G center, so a defined throat. So I think that really helped him. And my youngest son got bullied horribly. I was also bullied with that open throat. People couldn't see me, and it was mutant circuitry. And I didn't know how to handle it, but his emotions were all over the place. His fears were all over the place. And he would get very angry. If you don't have foundational energy, you have no idea what I'm talking about. But when something comes through there, an emotion, a thought, anger, whatever it is like a tsunami and you cannot stop it. So this poor kid was just everywhere. I mean, I'm still learning to witness and work with that energy, because when it takes over you, it's almost like you become possessed. And so I have this kid that has all of these emotions. He's being bullied. Nobody likes him. He's all over the place. What do? We put him on medication. And let me tell you something. They turned my kids into zombies. I couldn't understand it. Eventually, they both dropped out of school. They didn't want anything to do with school, no matter what I did. And I had them in every different type of school you could imagine, but I had no idea what was going on. And let me tell you, both of these kids would test at genius level.
Wow.
They're both extremely smart, but the school system, and it's not the school system's fault. It's all of the systems together. But I look back, and had I have known, or at least had a clue, everybody's life could have turned out differently. Myself is thinking I failed as a mother, my kids thinking they're ADHD or they weren't smart. They're some of the smartest people that I know. And I think this is what's happening. I read something someplace, or I listened to another expert talking about it, that 90% of the kids on ADHD medication are misdiagnosed.
Mhm.
That if you
Wow.
look at that, and then a lot of the kids that are being bullied horribly in school are projectors, or they have a lot of open throat or a lot of open centers. And it's
Yeah.
really,
I mean, I used to be bullied a lot in school too. And I mean, I had no tribal circuitry, like I mentioned before, and no defined G center. So I'm either undefined or open below my throat. So I only have 3 defined centers, my crown, ajna, and my throat. So, and then it's receiving all this information and all this energy. And let's talk about the undefined spleen, because I think that's a really good one to look at with fear and how anxiety can really be amplified there, because it's the oldest center, because it's all about fear, health, and instinct. But when that's undefined, the amplification of that fear can look a lot like anxiety disorders. And I had a shit ton of anxiety ever since I was a kid. And we don't know when to let go of certain things too. And so we also see addiction in people's charts and how that shows up. And even with like certain gates as well. And that to me has been so illuminating. Like with the undefined sacral for non-energy types, we don't know when enough is enough unless we know our design. So if we're amplifying and distorting, and then we're like using substances, like we don't have any definition of it saying like, okay, you're done. Okay, like stop, because we're just amplifying and distorting. It's like, oh, this feels good. Let's keep going. Let's go. Let's go. And so,
shitty relationships too. I don't want to
exactly.
interrupt you, but you're in a shitty
No, yeah.
relationship and that person defined your spleen.
Yeah.
They could be abusing you horribly and you still feel safe. So
Right. Yeah. So it's like looking at all these different things of, okay, is this really what I think it is, or is it an undefined or an open center? And, you know, going through the gates there, according to Gene Keys, like there's the shadow, the gift, and then the city. And so there can be the shadow in the gates as well. Like it's the gate and its gift and the beneficial things it has or not. So like as Vicky was saying with gate 9, it's focus or not. And I have gate 9. So for most of my life, like I was not really focused. Like I tried to do everything at once. And then I would just so like self-sabotage and burn myself out off an undefined sacral. But then once I really started to get to know what gate 9 is, and for me, it's like one thing at a time. Focus, one thing at a time, one step at a time. And then it really helped and transformed my life in that way. And so just going through all these things and looking at your chart and your family's charts and your children's or whoever that, you know, this is sparking interest, it really gives you the information that I'm sorry, like no other person in like outer authority can give you, like, you know, a doctor or like, you know, a specific like spiritual leader or whatever. It's like you get to claim this with your own inner authority and your contemplation.
Yeah. And, you know, for me, the reason for our podcast is not to give you all of the answers to these things. It's to tell you, to show you, to provoke you into a different way of thinking, to say, oh my gosh, this might be something that I have to look into. So you can get free chart. You could go to our either of our websites. You could get a free chart. You could Google free charts. If you think this might be an issue, if you're having problems, if you've been told your whole life you're ADHD or ADD, and you've got an open head and you've got, you know, maybe the gate of doubts or the gate of mystery or what have you, and you're cycling in your head, especially if you have no gates and there's no way for that energy to kind of escape except through a transit or what have you. These are things that we need to know. And these are things that human design has brought to us to say, hey, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again. And now here's a new piece of the puzzle where you can come in and say, well, wait a second, maybe my kid isn't ADHD. Why do we have to keep giving, them more and more education? Or why is my child unfocused? I laugh a lot of times because employers love a lot of this stuff. Like they're always looking for somebody that can multitask. You get somebody with that gate 9 focus and not and an open head and they're like, and especially an open root and you've got a great multitasker. Are they going to make a lot of mistakes? Yeah, probably. Are they going to wear themselves out? Yeah, probably. But these are the things that human design brings to you. So I don't know. Did you have anything else to add on that, Lauren?
Yeah, I just want to say, like, anybody who is interested in really going deeper into their experiment or, maybe applying this to their children or seeing the benefits of this. For me personally, like, I really healed a lot of my depression, a lot of my anxiety. I'm no longer on any medication whatsoever. And until I really learned this information and was experimenting with it, I don't think I would have been able to get here. And then I also was an alcoholic and I experimented with substances and I overate and all these things. And I don't do any of that stuff anymore because I really leaned into my experiment and my healing and seeing where I was being conditioned in the energy that was being amplified and distorting. And I just know that a huge part of it came from this intel and this understanding. And my inner authority, my soul, whatever you want to call it, like it just was like, this is what I need.
And I just thought of something else. We didn't cover splits.
Mm-hmm.
Splits are a big deal. And just really quick, splits are when you have one set of defined centers that don't talk to another set of defined centers. It means that there's no channel that is bringing them together. So the energy does not work as a whole. So now you get somebody in there that has splits and they may have a defined head and ajna and a defined root and sacral center, but the two aren't talking to each other. And then you get somebody who's a triple split or a quadruple split. They literally have different identities on different days because different centers are working. So you can say, you know what, who are you today? You hear people laugh and say, oh, who's going to show up today? A lot of times that is split circuitry. And especially somebody, with open emotional, and they may be a triple or a quadruple split, and their emotions are getting ramped up and they have an emotion or an open spleen or an open root, that could look a little bit bipolarish. It doesn't mean that it is. And especially like with a split or a triple split, a quadruple split, these people do much better in groups because when they're in groups, that energy is speaking, so they're more grounded. So if you have somebody who at home may be kind of all over the place, I feel so sorry for these poor people, but get them out to the mall or get them out someplace where they can get in where that energy is going to fill in. Because again, if you're being diagnosed with some sort of mental anxiety or mental disorder or bipolar, and especially with that open emotional with that, it's to be difficult for them.
Yeah. And also with splits, it's the timing for things to land may take a bit longer, and that's okay. Because people with single definition, we really can get the information we're interested in really fast, and we understand it. But for a split definition, it may take a while to land, and that's okay. They don't have a delay. It's just these two defined circuitry centers that are just working. And with the groups, it's really beneficial with people who bridge the split. And then it's just to be aware of, if you get in a romantic relationship with somebody who bridges your split, there can be this feeling of this other person completing them. And so it just has to be, or it doesn't have to be, but it just is more beneficial to look at that, to see if this person's energy is in your favor and positive for the bridging of the split, or if you get to be in a relationship with somebody who doesn't bridge your split, and you just feel your complete self as you are. So these are just some things to contemplate with these.
Yeah, and I will say one more thing. Like, if you are a triple or quadruple split and you are with somebody that bridges all of your splits, understand that you have to have an awareness, because after a while, if you have different ways in which your splits could be bridged, and this person is bridging those splits in the same way all of the time, it can feel like an annoyance to you, and it's not them. It's that rub of the energy for you. So a good thing is, if you do have these splits and this person's really getting on your nerves, you can go to the mall, or go someplace where you can bring in that different energy. But today's is more as false, I can't think of the word, false diagnosis based upon the design issues. So get the charts, and if you're not sure, reach out to Lauren or I or somebody and get the information before you put yourself or your kids or somebody on medication.
And if you want to look deeper into your design, if you want to work one-on-one with us, if you want to join Vicky's membership, all the links and all the contact information is in the description below. And in the following episodes, we are actually going to go a step deeper into some really interesting new leading edge intel that I haven't really heard any other type of human design groups, communities talk about. And this has to do with the dreams and gates and codons and Achilles heels.
Woo!
So just stay tuned for that.
Sacral, baby. Okay,
so yeah, stay tuned for way more. And we look forward to hearing your feedback, what you thought, if you have any questions. And thank you all so much for tuning in, being with us, and contemplating your human design.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye for now.
Hey, that's it for today. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, we absolutely love your feedback. So check out those links below and reach out with your insight, feedback, and even your ideas. And until next time, remember...
That's all, folks.